Turns out Marvel had a secret weapon this entire time, and it's a cute baby. Hey, welcome to Late Night Movie Talk. It's Jake, and tonight we're going to talk about Fantastic Four: The First Steps. It's directed by Matt Shakman, who has mostly done TV series up to this point, and so I think this is his first major film. And it's starring Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, Ebon Moss-Bachrach as Ben Grimm, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and Julia Gardner as Silver Surfer. Story basically begins with 4 years after their accident, where they've gotten their powers. So this world is already established. They're already known as superheroes. People love them, and they got everything pretty much laid out for you with a brief overview at the beginning of the movie. So we start off with Sue and Reed, learning that they are expecting a child, and so that causes them to, obviously have concerns with the baby, and is he going to be born with powers? Is he not? And Reed is freaking out because he's very concerned about about these things. And soon after that, you have Silver Surfer, who shows up and marks the planet for death, and warns them that Galactus is coming, and to prepare for their planet to be devoured, and everybody to meet their end and basically accept it because there's nothing you can do about it. So naturally, they just learned that they're expecting to be parents, and so they are looking to take the fight to Galactus, and they go out into space looking for him, and try to make a deal or try to find a way to defeat him, look for a weakness. That doesn't go well, and Galactus says he's willing to spare their planet in exchange for a certain price. Obviously, I'm not going to touch into that. That's spoilers, in my opinion, anyway. And so they go back to Earth, and they come up with this plan to be able to defeat Galactus when he eventually arrives to Earth. And so what I really loved about this movie would be, first and foremost, the production design. The 60s futuristic aesthetic. I'm really digging that style. So that this world that they've created, it feels real, even though you see some things that look like it definitely belongs in the future. It still is grounded in what we know Earth to be. It still takes place in New York City, but it's got this retro style to it, and it just looks cool. It looks better than like 90% of comic book movies when it comes to a production design standpoint, because it gives it its own personality, which is something that the MCU was kind of lacking for a long time. Everything started to feel like formulaic, or each movie had like the same feel to it. It all felt very digital, and this feels more grounded in a way. It also has a very good score. I love like that Fantastic Four theme song that they did. You saw it in the you saw it, you heard it in the trailer, you hear it throughout the movie. I really like it. The composer for the movie, I didn't recognize him by name. His name's Michael Giacchino. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. But when you look him up, you're like, shit, this guy's done quite a bit. Like he's done some really good movies, and so he's somebody to pay attention to from now on. The music, throughout the entire movie does exactly what it needs to do. It fits not only the style, but it fits the story and the characters and what they got going on throughout the movie pretty well. And what else I really liked about this is that, it's this superhero movie, but it took the time to give you really nice character moments. And they really focused on the team itself, on the Fantastic Four. And you get these little scenes where the small interactions between like Johnny and Ben, and you get to learn about them and how they think or feel without it being like shoved down your face. It feels very organic. And I really like that because, you know, by the end of the movie, when there's real stakes involved, like you want to actually care about the people that you're watching. And I thought they did a good job, getting you to care about, pretty much all of these characters. And the pacing of the movie, it never really felt like it was dragging to me. It's just under 2 hours, and it feels shorter than that because it flows really well for me. Standout performance has got to be Vanessa Kirby. I thought she nailed it as Sue Storm. Whenever she needed to be, the hero, she, fit right into that. When she needed to be a mother, when she needed to be a wife, whenever she needed to be, anything. Because, I think she probably had the most to do in this movie, right next to Pedro Pascal. And I thought she knocked it out of the park. I wasn't too sure about her, but she's a great Sue Storm. You're only good as your villain, and they finally, I think, did Galactus pretty damn good. He looks really good. You can tell that a lot of that budget went to making Galactus look and feel, larger than life, like he could really devour a planet. And whenever he is on screen, and I saw this in IMAX, so that definitely helps. But when he's on screen, you feel just how enormous this being is. And so whenever he's on screen and the characters, see him for the first time, and you see him for the first time, you guys are like on the same page because, the audience and the characters can feel how massive he is. So his character design, his voice work, really no complaints about Galactus like at all. I thought they did a really good job at showcasing his size and his strength and his powers as well. And you got the sense that like he is like this unstoppable force. And so whenever, by the time he does get to Earth, you do feel like there is real danger that people could really die. And so that just goes back to, I think, the writing, where they did a good job at making you care about these characters. Therefore, when they finally, have real danger in the movie, you feel that as an audience member. The special effects are, like I said, Galactus, his effects, his CGI looks amazing. The effects on like the production with New York and the setting and all that stuff, everything looks good. Everything looks like it feels it feels real. Like you could actually step into this world. But man, there is some really spotty CGI, particularly with that cute ass baby. There's some you can blatantly tell when the baby is CGI, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. Like some parts are just like, why? Like why? And I get it. Like it's working with a baby. I have kids. Get them to do anything you want when you want them to do it. Impossible. It cannot be ignored. Some of it downright looks bad. The other thing, I still have some issues with some of the cast where I don't fully buy them as their character. I still don't really see Reed Richards with Pedro Pascal. He's a little bit better than the trailer, kind of led me to believe, but I still don't buy him as Mr. Fantastic. And that mainly comes down to, it's not his look, it's his performance. You don't get a lot of emotion from him, and that could change. Maybe he'll grow on me. Maybe he won't. I hope he does, because he's going to be Mr. Fantastic. I don't really buy Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm either. He's not as bad as I thought he was going to be, but even in the movie, you don't really get him really acting like Johnny Storm, if that makes sense. And Julia Gardner was okay as Silver Surfer. Didn't have a lot of screen time. She had a couple good moments, and like I said, everything else was fine. Didn't bother me. But overall, I really had a good time with this movie. I would say it's one of the better MCU movies, not just post Endgame like everybody likes to talk about, but I would put it up against a fair amount of the other MCU movies. I thought they just did a really good job at making it its own movie, its own story, its own style, and it feels like its own thing. And Marvel needs to do that more. And because when they do that, it works. Like, go back to Phase 1, like Iron Man, his movies felt like his movies. Captain America felt like his movies. Thor had his own feel to his movies. And as the MCU progressed, it became more of the same like style, and characters kind of lost their individuality as far as their movies go and how they looked and how they felt. So change up the opening credits, change up the style. It works. It keeps fans and the audience interested, because you're changing it up. It mixes things up and it doesn't get stale. And so keep doing this. I like it. I think it works. The movie is a solid 4.5 out of 5 for me. I really like the movie. I recommend going to see it. Go see it in IMAX if you can. It really pays off for those scenes with Galactus for obvious reasons. There is 2 post-credit scenes, so make sure you stick around for both of those. One is not very important at the very end, but the first after credit scene, I would say it's important. So obviously stick around for that. Most people know to do that by now. Fantastic Four feels like almost a resurgence in the MCU. It gives me a little hope that they might be going back, on on the right path despite the hiccups that they've had. And so I'm hopeful going forward, and I'm looking forward to more from the MCU now, because at one point I was a bit kind of done with the MCU, like a lot of people. It just wasn't as interesting anymore. So this has piqued my interest again, and it sort of like reignited a little bit of excitement going forward. So if you've seen the movie, you comment below and let me know what you thought about it. Don't forget, give the video a like, subscribe, share. I do appreciate it, and thank you for watching.